Hey guys, YouTuber 100 here. Alright, and now continuing with my classic monster movie reviews this month. Now here I am with a review for Frankenstein. So, yeah, for this film, this is just like a real great film right here. I mean, yeah, this film is just like a real classic, really. I mean, yeah, this is probably looked at by many to be probably the greatest of these old classic monster films, and yeah, rightfully so. I mean, this is just like a really phenomenal masterpiece, really. I mean, yeah, it is kind of like a pretty short film. It's only about like an hour and 10 minutes, but yeah, in that hour and 10 minutes, it's just a really great film. I mean, yeah, I'm sure just about like all you really know this story. I mean, yeah, it's really just like this scientist that ends up like creating a creature, and he like ends and yeah, the monster of course is like made up of like body parts of dead people. And yeah, Stanley has actually said that this is the film that really did really inspire him when he created Hulk. And yeah, this film this really does kind of really have kind of some things that really did I guess like Hulk was really based off of, because Stanley has said that he really feels that in this movie that the monster is not really like evil or anything. He really does feel like the monster in this film really is a good guy, and he really doesn't want to hurt anyone but just because he's looked at as being a threat and he's just like so misunderstood. That's why he really does the stuff that he does in this film. And yeah, I kind of like do feel the same way. Like in this film, the monster, like he really isn't like I really don't think like he really did like want to do like what he does. Like he's really not trying to like be like a real evil creature, and he's really not trying to do bad stuff. Like anytime that he really does do bad stuff, it's just because well, yeah, when the doctor and his associates, like he really does want is really out for them, because I mean they really did start it because they saw him as a threat when he reacted to the torch, and so after that they just kind of found him as a threat, and because of how they treated him, he really does want to really go out for them. But with anyone else, it's I really don't think he's really trying to really do anything wrong. I mean, I really don't think he really wants to hurt people. It's just because he, it's really just because he really doesn't know any better, and it's it's kind of like with an a newborn child or something, or a really young child. It's when they do wrong things and stuff, it just they don't know any better. I mean, he's really not trying to cause any harm to people. Like the scene where he is playing with that little girl, and he ends up inadvertently drowning her. I mean, he wasn't really trying to murder the girl or kill her, just because he really didn't know any better. Because I mean, because of what they were doing, he just really did believe that she would do the same thing, and he just ended up throwing her into the water, but she ended up drowning. But he really wasn't really, that was not his intent. He really wasn't trying to do any harm to her. So yeah, that's an example. So yeah, the monster in this film, he's not really not evil. I mean, it's just because the way he's looked at, it's just he's so misunderstood, and that's really why he acts the way he does in this film. So yeah, the monster in this film, he's really not the villain in this film. I really do kind of look at the doctor in this film to really be the villain because of the way he treats the monster and how he really does kind of want to get rid of the monster because he sees the monster as a threat when the monster really didn't do anything wrong to him. So yeah, this story, I really do feel this story really is kind of sad. This movie really is kind of sad because of the way the monster is looked at, and even what happened to the monster at the end of this film. It really is kind of a real tragic story, really. Right? Yeah. So yeah, it's just really kind of sad how the monster is looked at in this film, and what ends up like happening to him at the end of this film. Like, it really is like a real sad story. But yeah, it's still like a really great film. I would say that this film is definitely like a solid 4-star film. Just like it is a really great film. Now, of course, like I'm sure probably a lot of you know this. Yeah, Frankenstein is not actually, like the name of the monster. I mean, Frankenstein's the name of the doctor that created him. I guess it's because like the name is so famous that it is like associated with the monster, and that's why the monster really is identified as Frankenstein. But yeah, the monster technically isn't even actually named Frankenstein. It's the doctor. But yeah, this is still a really great film. Boris Karloff is phenomenal as the monster in this film. Yeah, I mean, Boris Karloff just knocks it out of the park. I mean, just like with Bela Lugosi as Dracula, I mean, Boris Karloff, he just is fantastic in this role. I mean, Boris Karloff as the monster is probably like one of the most legendary performances of all time, one of the most famous as well. I mean, Boris Karloff is just fantastic in this film. And yeah, I thought it was like really clever that like in the opening credits of this film, when it lists the cast, like you don't actually see Boris Karloff's name by the monster. There's just a question mark there. So yeah, I do really do think it's interesting. Yeah, because yeah, back during this time, like Boris Karloff, he really wasn't like totally identified as that. Like sometimes Boris Karloff would really most of the time he'd be identified as Karloff the Uncanny, and like here like his name just wouldn't be listed. So yeah, so I thought that was kind of an interesting thing with this. And yeah, everyone else in this film, I'd say, is pretty good. I mean, Colin Clive as the Doctor is really good. Mae Clark is good. And yeah, we have like a bunch of other cast members in this movie, and I think that they all do a pretty good job in this. And yeah, this is just a really great story. I mean, it's really tragic and sad of how much of a misunderstanding this really is to the monster, but and yeah, it just like I guess this is just kind of like how it really shows that so you can really be looked as a threat, but you really are not trying to really hurt people. But yeah, if you're like part of like in the situation that the monster was in this film, I mean, people can really see you as a threat. I mean, I kind of like associate this kind of like I think this can be like comparable to like Beauty and the Beast. Like you see, like the Beast is really looked at as like a really like monstrous creature, and you remember how like Gaston and the villagers like wanting to destroy the beast, and that was really the case here too. With like you have all the villagers wanting to really capture the monster and put an end to him. So yeah, it's just like kind of like one of those stories where like you're just looked at by everyone as being like a real monstrous creature when really that's not what you are at all. But yeah, this is like just a real great 4-star film, nonetheless. Alright. Yeah, so yeah, 4 stars out of 4. Alright, so yeah, let me just get right into it. Alright, so the movie actually opens up with kind of like just a word of warning about this movie and story, like about telling the tale of Frankenstein stuff. And then it shows that there's like some sort of funeral going on, and Dr. Henry Frankenstein and his assistant, who's a hunchback named Fritz, are like spying on the funeral, and then once the body's buried, then they dig it back up and pretty much steal the body ready for their creation. Yeah. And the doctor really just has the intent to just create human life through electrical devices. And yeah, the doctor's fiance Elizabeth really is kind of like worrying about his actions, and she just really doesn't understand why he really does act the way he does, and why he's really like secluded in a watchtower that's been abandoned. And he's now like just made it his laboratory, and he just doesn't want to see anyone else. And Elizabeth and her friend Victor, like, are like kind of like feeling the same way about it, and so they end up like recruiting the doctor's like his former medical professor, Dr. Waldman, and they really just go to him to ask him to help them and to like like reclaim him, the doctor, or from his experiments, yeah. And then yeah, they like end up paying a visit to the doctor, and yeah, they're arriving just as like the doctor and Fritz are like gonna like do their final test on their creation, and yeah, he just sits them down to watch their test. Yeah, and then the doctor and Fritz like end up like raising the creature on their operating table high up toward like the an opening that they have in the top of the room. Room. Yeah. And then after like a big thunder hit and like the machines start to like crackle, and it then like shows the monster's hand like starting to move, and then yeah, then the doctor just of course like says the legendary line, "It's alive! It's alive!" Yeah. And later on, like the doctor was then trying to show Dr. Waldman and that the monster really just is like a real innocent creation, and he was just showing Dr. Waldman how like the monster really will like do anything he says. Like he told the monster to sit, which it did, and yeah, just pretty much like just demonstrating the monster really is harmless. And then he was like showing the monster was like reacting to sunlight. He was like reaching out towards it. But eventually Fritz ended up like arriving with a flame torch, and then yeah, that ended up kind of like scaring the monster, and like he was like really reacting to it, really like with like moving his arms and stuff. And then yeah, the doctor and Dr. Waldman and like thought that the monster was actually trying to attack him. And then they just ended up like chaining the monster into the dungeon, and they felt that just the monster may actually wreak, wreak havoc at any chance it does. And then they just leave the monster locked up in the dungeon, and as Fritz was like antagonizing the monster with the torch again, eventually like the monster just ended up like like strangling Fritz, and then the doctor and Dr. Waldman just found Fritz dead in the dungeon, and the monster then like was charging at both the doctor and Dr. Waldman, and yeah, and they ended up like locking the monster back inside, right? And then they then just ended up like preparing like a drug to knock out the monster, and then yeah, they ended up like luring the monster out, and then as the monster was like charging at the doctor, Dr. Wallman then ended up injecting the monster, and yeah, the monster eventually ended up collapsing. Yeah, and yeah, later on, like Dr. Wallman was just like trying to examine the monster some more, and he was about to bisect it, but then yeah, the creature then just awoken and ended up strangling Dr. Waldman, and then eventually the monster just ended up like escaping from the tower and then ended up just wandering through the village. And it just showed like the doctor was then like just preparing for his wedding to Elizabeth, yeah. And it eventually then showed the monster then just meeting the little girl, Maria, who was a daughter of a local farmer, her Ludwig. And then, yeah, Maria was just then playing with the monster. They were like playing a game with like tossing flowers into the lake and watching them float. And yeah, the monster like did really like playing the game, but then they eventually ran out of flowers, and then he thought that Maria would also float, and then he ended up like throwing Maria into the water also, but then she ended up drowning, and the monster like just really didn't really know what happened, and because of what happened, and it just really did upset him about what this outcome turned out to be. He just ended up like running away. Yeah. And yeah, as the wedding was about to go on, like like it was show like it was revealed that the doctor and Elizabeth would actually marry when Waldman ended up arriving to the wedding, but eventually Victor ended up arriving and he just told the doctor that Waldman was found strangled in the operating room. Yeah. And it then showed like the monster then like breaking into the room that Elizabeth was in, and then like after like the doctor heard a scream, then he was convinced that the monster was actually in the house, and then yeah, then just showed then Elizabeth was just unconscious on the bed after and the monster was gone, and then it eventually then just showed then Ludwig was carrying Maria, and he just told the burgomaster that his daughter was murdered, and then all the peasants and villagers ended up like forming a search party to end up capturing the monster and just put an end to him. And then yeah, then everyone just went into three groups with Ludwig, the doctor, and the burgomaster leading the groups. It was to find the monster. And then as they were all searching for the monster, then like the doctor ended up like being separated from his group, and eventually the monster found him, and the monster ended up like attacking the doctor and eventually knocked the doctor out. And then the monster ended up like carrying the doctor to a windmill, and yeah, the like all the other villagers could like hear the doctor like screaming for help, and then yeah, they like gave chase to the monster, and then the monster then just climbed to the top of the windmill, with the doctor, and yeah, eventually like the monster then just ended up like throwing the doctor down to the ground, but then like the doctor's fall was broken by the windmill vanes, and yeah, that ended up saving his life, but yeah, he was like really injured. So then like some of the villagers then just took the doctor back home to give him to give him the medical attention that he needed. But yeah, other villagers ended up like staying at the windmill, and then they just ended up lighting it ablaze, and yeah, it just burned up, and then yeah, it just then showed the monster was inside of the windmill, and yeah, he just eventually ended up like being surrounded by flames, and he eventually ended up getting pinned down, and then like it just showed like the entire windmill just going ablaze, and yeah, it just like is a really sad way that how the monster goes, because like I said, he really was not evil, and yeah, he really wasn't trying to hurt people, just because of how he was looked at was the way he was acting this way. Yeah. And then yeah, the movie then just like ended with like the doctor's father then just celebrating the wedding of his son, and then just proposing a toast to a future grandchild. And that's how the movie ended. So, yeah, like I said, 4 stars out of 4. I mean, it really is a great film. It is really sad the way the monster is looked at, and yeah, just really great. Because, yeah, as I've just said all the time, just yeah, it's just really is sad the way the monster is looked at, because I mean he really is not wanting to, really didn't want to hurt anybody, and yeah, when he did, it really wasn't blatant, like he really wasn't trying to do any of that, like especially when it was like with people that had nothing to do with the way the doctor really looked at him, like when what he did to the girl and stuff, yeah, just because of how the doctor really looked at him, which was felt about him was why he was acting the way he was towards the doctor and everyone associated with him. But yeah, it just really is sad the way the monster is looked at. But it is still a great film, and yeah, of an outstanding performance by Boris Karloff as the monster. And it really just like sucks that Boris Karloff really did not stay on through these films all the way through, because I mean there were like yeah, you can see right here, you see like all of the sequels right here, and it just really does suck that Boris Karloff really didn't stay on for these, and he really was like eventually gone, and yeah, they would like end up like casting some other actors to play the monster, so that sucks, and yeah, none of them really were as greatest Boris Karloff at all. So yeah, that sucks. But yeah, 4 stars out of 4. Definitely like a real great film, right? And so yeah, like I told you before, I was really gonna focus on Frankenstein in these reviews because, well, not really focus, but yeah, I was gonna look at a lot, like some of the sequels involving him, since he's probably the most iconic one of these classic monsters. So yeah, I will be looking at some of the Frankenstein sequels, but yeah, not all of them, and yeah, I won't get into any of the sequels quite just yet. I'm gonna go through like some other of these classic movies before I actually start looking at any of the sequels. So yeah, don't worry about that. I'll still be looking at some movies for some of these other classic monsters before I get to that. Alright, but yeah, anyway, alright, so that does it for my review of Frankenstein. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, so yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.